was the fact that there was women who interviewed me, who saw my case, who saw I was pregnant, who knew I couldn't even come into the office because of the stress they were causing me. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So if you follow me on Instagram and you've been listening to my Insta stories of lately, you will know that I've been talking about a company that I used to work for that I resigned from because I was treated so terribly throughout my pregnancy and the first 4 to 5 months of my daughter's life. So I basically used to work for a fashion tech company called Farfetch. I used to work in the travel industry. I was in my company for 4 years and I worked as a content editor. So my background is in fashion journalism. I have a master's in fashion journalism. When this job at Farfetch came up, I saw it as my opportunity to finally get into fashion. Obviously I worked online as well, so it was a good way for me to kind of combine both my skills and move to this job in Farfetch. I mean, I was so passionate and so excited about going to this role. As far as I was concerned, it was my dream job and I even took a pay cut to go there. However, once I got there, the job really didn't marry up to what I had expected and what was sold to me in the interview. So I think I was in the company around 8 months when I realised that things had really started to go a little bit south. There was like bullying in my team. There was one girl who used to bully another girl. This girl used to complain to my manager. My manager would never really kind of rectify the problems. It never really got escalated to HR. And I think when it eventually did, nothing happened. There was rivalry within the team. There was people being turned against each other within the team. And it was weird because my manager was completely aware of all of this and just kind of let the team fall apart around him. The entire team was unhappy, like everybody. And then what happened was a manager came in above him who was kind of breathing down, not so much breathing down his neck, but then became more conscious of our team and the way that our team was functioning or not functioning and how unhappy our team was. And then they got put into place a new role that we would all have to transition into and that would basically make the jobs that we were doing completely obsolete. So this is where the problems started to happen. The new manager put in place this weekly feedback form that we would have to fill in every week, and it was done online and it was supposedly anonymous. I mean, I don't know how anonymous anything can be online when you can track everything to an IP address or a computer or whatever. But anyway, it was said to be anonymous. At first I was like, I've got so many deadlines, so many targets, I actually don't have time to do this feedback. Then we started to get emails prompting us, please make sure you do the feedback, please make sure you do the feedback, there's not going to be any change if you don't do the feedback. So eventually I started to do it. And because I was basically so unhappy with the job and the kind of the state of the team and the way that everything was going, I started to be completely and utterly honest. I spoke about my manager, I spoke about the lack of progress that I felt I had, I spoke about the uncertainty that I had in my job. Lo and behold, there was then a whole presentation that my boss did to the team, which was questioning why everybody was so negative. Now, of course, people are negative because they're not happy in their job and they're not motivated. But it started to seem that this word negative, and there's a lot of negativity and this and that kept being thrown around all the time. And what I couldn't understand is, why is this manager not taking any responsibility for the negativity in the team? If there's people in the team that aren't talking, if there's people in the team that are being bullied, if there's people in the team that are leaving, surely you must be thinking to yourself, okay, is it me? What do I need to do? I obviously need to change my management skills or learn how to manage people or do something. And one day I was called into a meeting to talk about my motivation in the company and why I wasn't motivated. And he said to me, you know, when you started, you're one of the people that really stood out to me, and I just want to know what happened. And I was like, well, obviously I feel like I was told there was going to be things put in place that haven't happened, or they've happened and they've been taken away from us. And I was just like, I don't feel fulfilled. I was very open, I was very honest about it. And he basically said that I need to be careful about this negativity because it's feeding into the team and it affects other people badly. Now, bearing in mind, I don't know what team this man was talking about, because everybody in the team was negative. So it wasn't like I was feeding down negativity to this person, that person, and whoever. Everybody felt horrendous about their job. It was the reason why the transition was put in place, because everybody was so unhappy and because the job we was doing was basically a pile of shit. And obviously the manager above my manager realised this and changed all of our jobs. We was given new targets, new markets to manage, and this new role basically had nothing to do with what it was that I was trying to do or achieve in my career. When this new job came into place and I was starting to read the objectives of the job and the targets, I was like, I had no actual idea of how I was ever going to achieve these targets. These targets didn't even mean anything to me. It was absolute rubbish. It was when I became suspicious that, do you know what, they're going to use this job or these targets as the goalposts to decide whether we are capable of doing the job or not, and giving them the opportunity to manage us out of the company. I wasn't the only person that had that suspicion. There was lots of people in the company that were in my team that felt that this didn't seem quite right. And of course, you would be suspicious because, you know, I don't have the skill set to do this job. So why would I be able to achieve these targets? How would I be able to achieve these targets? And actually, the training that was put in place was horrendous. And the first deadline that we had, the training was an absolute joke. The team became vocal about how bad the training was, and in actual fact it ended up being that a member of my team had to do the training as opposed to my manager. So this made no sense whatsoever. Throughout the transition period, a new manager came in. He was going to sit in between my boss and the team. So he carried out a new training session. It was quite weird that this guy, who's only been in the company a couple of weeks, doesn't really understand the state of the team, the new team structure, who's who in the team, is going to manage this new training session. And not only is he managing the training session, but my actual manager didn't even attend the training session to see how he would perform in this session. So as the training session came to an end, the new manager asked, so I've been picking up on the vibe that a lot of people in this team are unhappy. Like, could you explain to me, like, why is everyone so negative? So I thought, this does not seem right. Like, why is this guy instigating this conversation? However, you know, it was an opportunity for me to vocalise how I felt, implement change as and when I can. So I spoke, and everybody in the room spoke, and it was an open forum. It was an open discussion. Everybody spoke. The following Friday, came into work, was called into a meeting, and basically was told that I was being invited to an investigation in relation to events that took place in the training session with the new manager. So in this time, I'm thinking, firstly, what is there to investigate? Like, you know, just ask him what we said or ask me what I said. I don't know what the investigation is about. Secondly, I'm pregnant and you're going to put me in under an investigation for such rubbish. I mean, fair enough if I bullied somebody or if I was racist. You know, fair enough if I had been offensive, coming to work drunk or whatever. Fair enough, I'm pregnant, but I've been so badly behaved or I've been so disgraceful as an employee that they have to bring me under investigation. But for voicing my opinion for something that was asked of me, I don't understand what the investigation was for. So when they invited me to the meeting, they was like, oh, you know, it's nothing stressful. It's just we want to sit down and it's just a fact-finding exercise, whatever. I got to my desk and my boss handed me a letter. I opened up the letter and it said, I'm being invited to an investigation due to my misconduct in the business. Now, hang on. When I sat down and spoke to you, you told me you was interviewing me for negativity. Now you're telling me it's misconduct. Are misconduct and negativity synonymous? Of course they're not. What is so wrong with being negative? The company was negative. The job was negative. The manager was shit. The entire team felt negativity. So I was like, okay, there's obviously something going on here that is much deeper than what I'm realising, and much deeper than I went and I found myself a lawyer, and I started looking at union reps and doing my research, and I realised that basically I was in the beginning of a process that would be to manage me out of the business. I think I went into hospital that weekend because something happened. I think maybe I didn't sleep through the night, or the baby was in a funny position, and I went into hospital that weekend. Obviously struggled with sleep because I just had such anxiety about what was going to happen at work on the following Monday. So on that Monday morning, I went to the doctors and I explained the situation, and I explained that, you know, I'm suffering with SPD throughout my pregnancy. I haven't had a risk assessment at work, so I'm not comfortable at work anyway. And now I've got this situation where I'm being subjected to this investigation, and I'm just concerned, as naturally any woman would be, about their unborn child, about what impact this is going to have on my body and on my baby. And immediately she was like, you cannot go back into that office. And she said that they should not be subjecting you to this undue stress throughout your pregnancy. And she wrote me a letter that said that I would be taking, I think it was 2 weeks off work. She actually wanted to write me off for my entire pregnancy. But I was like, no, like, I need to go back to work. I mean, of course, I was even concerned about things like, am I going to get paid if I'm signed off for sickness. I don't know how this process works. I've never done it before. Anyway, I said, no, I need to go back to work. She was like, well, how long do you want? And I just said, just give me 2 weeks. And I think that will give me time to kind of, figure out what's going on. Went back home, sent the letter over to HR. And I think within that week, they then started to kind of sell the investigation process to me. Oh, we really don't want this to cause you any stress. We just want you to know it's just a fact-finding exercise. They kept talking about this fact-finding rubbish. I'm signed off sick at this point. I've still got Farfetch emailing me, the HR emailing me constantly. So I'm not being funny. I'm off work due to stress, and you're still on my case about this stupid investigation, wanting to know when they can set a date, when can we have the hearing, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? Let me just set the date for the investigation and let me just do it. So I went back to the doctors the Friday before the Monday I was going to return back to work, and I, kind of just had her assess me, and I was like, do you think it's okay for me to go back to work? I'm feeling like I want to go back to work now. I just want to deal with this investigation. And she was like, if you feel like you can cope with it and whatever, she's like, I'm happy for you to return back to work. She was like, you don't even have to come back here if you want to be signed off again. She was like, just call me. I'm aware of your situation now, and we can reinstate the sick leave the second that you need it. So I was like, fine. So that weekend I obviously did not sleep. I was so anxious about going back to work. Now I obviously didn't want to face my manager, because by this point I'm actually hating him, because he's not even played one blind eye to the fact that I am pregnant. And I didn't want to face anybody else in the team, because I just, at this point, didn't trust anybody, and just felt like, I was just in this horrible situation. Nobody wants to be working somewhere where they basically know that actually they're not wanted there. Went into work that day. My manager was sat at his desk. He just said hello, and that was it. What he didn't say was, how are you, Aisha? How are you feeling? I know you have been off work due to the stress that this company has caused you. Obviously, because we're going through this transitioning period at the moment, there was lots of training that I had missed. So I was also feeling really, really anxious about the fact that I wasn't up to speed on the training, and I was also expecting a return to work meeting, which you are supposed to have when you return back to work, when you have been out of the office or out of the business due to sickness. So this never ever happened. But however, I emailed HR when I returned, and I just said, just to let you know that I'm back in the office now, and please feel free to let me know when you would like to go ahead with this investigation meeting. Literally within about half an hour, the date was set for the investigation hearing. But yet nobody has told me when they're going to give me an interview, a return to work interview. Not only that, however, but now I'm receiving like deadlines that are coming in for this and that, and I'm obviously like, I don't know how to even achieve these deadlines because I haven't had the training, and I don't know how to actually execute this work. And then I get an email from my boss stating that he would like to meet with me on XYZ date to talk about this deadline. And I'm thinking, you've not even asked me how I am. You've not even thought, I've just been out of the office for 2 weeks for stress. Let me try and help to ease her back into her job and her new role and the transition a little bit better. Let me help her to understand the training that we've done, or schedule some new training for her, or whatever. Nothing. There was no acknowledgement, nothing. They just wanted to get that investigation date in, and that was it. At this point I realised these people do not give a shit about the fact that I'm pregnant, and they're not seeming to operate with any caution or any duty of care like most employers would have towards a pregnant woman in the workplace. And I was thinking, so I had that first meeting when he pulled me up to say that I was negative, and then I've got this second meeting now, which is an investigation over my negativity. So I was like, first of all, I was thinking, no, maybe I'm being too precious, and if they need to talk about negativity and try and apply a little bit of pressure for me to be less negative, fair enough. But then when they're putting in place an investigation, which an outcome could be dismissal, performance reviews, and all this kind of stuff, which only adds to even more stress, I was like, no, these people don't give a shit. I went home that day, I was in pain, I couldn't walk. My husband had to pick me up from the station, took me straight to hospital. I think it was in hospital till like 5 o'clock in the morning. I was in such pain, and I just was like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I'm not comfortable at work because my seat hasn't been checked. My back is killing me. I've now got all these other emotional and stress issues going on, along with all the physical pain that I'm feeling. Plus I'm pregnant, scared as hell of what is going to happen to me and my baby, that I was just like, we just decided that no, I'm going back to the doctors, and I'm going to get signed off again. And I got signed off again, and then I raised a grievance, and I just said, look, I'm not happy with how I've been treated. And just to highlight how little these people cared, throughout the 5 months that I was in the business, in the office, pregnant, and complaining about my back because I had SPD and basically couldn't get up and walk out of my seat when I was in the workplace, because my back was so bad. I never had a risk assessment put in place. I remember the first day that I went and sat down with my boss and I had a list of all of my appointments, all of my antenatal appointments that I would need to attend over the next XYZ months. He basically said to me, yes, those appointments are fine as long as you can make up the time. Thank God I had my maternity policy and the company maternity policy printed out in front of me, and I actually had to say to him, I said, of course I'm going to make sure I get my work done. I'm not going to neglect my work. However, by law, I actually don't have to make up that time. He was like, excuse me? I said, oh, I've got the form here if you'd like to look at it. He said, no, it's fine, I'll speak to HR. 2 seconds later, I went back to his desk and wrote me an email, apologies. I'm so sorry, I didn't realise. HR said it's fine. Of course you didn't realise, because you didn't familiarise yourself with the maternity policy, and you can't just then be acting ignorant and just doing whatever the hell it is that you want. He should have familiarised himself with the policy, now knowing that he's got a pregnant woman on his team. So HR, obviously they was like, it's just a fact-finding exercise. Is there anything that we can do to help relieve your stress and your anxiety? And I actually said, yes, there is one thing you can do. I was like, I want to know who's made these allegations against me. HR had led me to believe that the new manager who ran that training session was the one who raised a grievance against me because of my negativity. Why would somebody raise a grievance against me or anyone when they've only been in the company 2 weeks, or at this point maybe only been in the company a week? I received a phone call from the new manager. In actual fact, he said he never raised a single grievance the entire time he was in the company. He told me that there had been a process put in place by HR before he had even started, which was to target me and the 2 other girls, and that was basically what he was doing. He obviously didn't like the fact that he was being forced to do this, and he also felt like he was being subjected to discrimination. I mean, I don't know anything about the discrimination part on where he's concerned. However, it is important to probably mention here that there were 3 girls that were in this situation, me and 2 other girls, all 3 of us black. And then obviously the new manager was also black, and it may have been that Farfetch were using this as a way to avoid the racial discrimination because it was black on black as opposed to a white manager doing it to 3 black girls. And basically that is how they falsified this grievance. It later turned out that the new manager had been dismissed from the company. I think he turned up to work one day. They basically told him to pack up his stuff and leave because he had been apparently he was being misogynistic and sexist, and apparently they felt that he wasn't capable of doing the job. I raised my grievance, and then I found out that my friends who were still in the office who had also been subjected to the investigation had their investigation hearings, and then I think a week later they told me that the investigation had been completely dropped. In the meantime, I was going through the grievance process. Now, if I'm someone who is aggrieved, then you think that if the investigation has been dropped, that would be one thing that would alleviate my stress, and you would tell me immediately as a pregnant woman who is signed off work for stress caused by the company, oh Aisha, we just want to let you know, if you would like to still go ahead with the grievance process, you can do, but we just want to let you know that the investigation has been dropped. However, they didn't tell me the investigation had been dropped. They let me go through the entire grievance process. They let me go through the entire hearing. They made me wait weeks and weeks and weeks on end for the notes that were taken during my grievance process hearing. All the notes were completely fabricated. Half of them didn't cover half the things that I had stated. All the important things that I spoke about were not included in the notes that they gave back to me at all. I had to spend a whole week just going through and rewriting the notes and getting them signed by HR because it was absolute rubbish. I'm doing all this knowing that the investigation has been dropped. However, I have to wait for a grievance outcome. So I finally get the outcome, and the outcome says that, nothing that I've said is founded. The fact that your manager didn't ask you how you were is because it was a very busy day that day. The fact that there was no return to work interview, not even acknowledged. The fact that you've been signed off work due to stress because of your pregnancy, not even acknowledged. I think the only thing that was acknowledged was, if there is a breakdown in relationship between you and your manager, we don't think that it's something that can't be solved, and we are happy to assist in rebuilding this relationship once you return to the business. I was like, really, 2 women, both who had children, could not see why it might be important for a woman who's returning back to work after being signed off for sickness due to the company to say, how are you? How do you feel? Or welcome back. They couldn't even see that. They couldn't see why I might need a risk assessment. And they didn't see why they should have told me that the investigation had been dropped. Until it was the very last minute, They said to me, and we just want to let you know that the investigation is no longer going ahead. Well, why isn't the investigation going ahead? Why has it been dropped? Tell me why it has been dropped. I let on to the fact that actually I've known that this investigation was dropped 6 weeks ago. Why have you allowed me to go through this 6-week process and not told me? They didn't tell me. They've never answered this question to this day as to why the investigation was dropped, and they've never told me why I wasn't told. So I appealed again even further, and I think the next person I went up to was, so I went to like the head of HR, I think it was, and then from HR I went to the CFO of Farfetch, and not one person could see anything or any rhyme or reason in what it was that I had to say. There was no responsibility taken for the idiot of a manager that they had employed and the treatment that he had subjected me to. But what made me even more angry above anything was the fact that there was women who interviewed me, who saw my case, who saw I was pregnant, who knew I couldn't even come into the office because of the stress they were causing me. You know, that I have been suffering with my back for months and months and months on end throughout my pregnancy, to the point I would email my manager every other day saying that I've had to work from home today because of my back. Nobody ever thought, okay, this girl should have had a risk assessment. This girl should have been, shown some form of care. So you have to bear in mind that I was going through this throughout my entire pregnancy. It was the most difficult thing ever. I was, for the sake of my sanity and the well-being of my unborn child and myself, I decided that I was just going to get signed off sick, take my maternity leave early. So I, in actual fact, ended up having to take my maternity leave, I think maybe 2.5 months before my child even was born. Now the thing with that is the impact that has means it means I have less time to spend with her once she's here. So that impacted my maternity leave and my pregnancy in that respect. And then, of course, because I was so scared and unable to even fathom the idea of returning back to this hellhole that was as toxic as hell, I had to then start looking for a job because I knew that I couldn't go back there. So I was even using my maternity leave, the time that I was supposed to be spending with my child in her first year on this planet, on my phone constantly, having to look at jobs and, having to deal with things like talking to recruitment agents. And this shouldn't have been the time for that. This should have been the time where I was just focusing on my child. But this company, right up until I think my daughter was 4 months old, I was still dealing with Farfetch and their rubbish. Like, it was literally to the point where once I spoke to the CFO, I had to let go and be like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep stressing myself out like this. I just want to focus on my child. I just drew a line under it there, and I have been since then quiet about it because I've just been kind of focusing on me and just moving forward. However, I think that this is not something that should be taken lightly. It's not fair that companies are able to do this to women and that, we go off with our tail between our legs, completely disadvantaged by the whole situation because we're out of a job. Because let's be honest, even if you go back to that job, you're still subjecting yourself to stress, and they're still probably going to try and manage you out of the business somehow, as and when they can anyway. But they get away scot-free, and this is happening far too often. And you know what? The only reason why I kept my mouth shut for as long as I did was because I was like, I am going to need to get a job one day, and I was scared that by speaking up and telling my story would make me unemployable. This is something that I felt like it was my duty to talk about because I feel like I have been silenced because I still want to be employable. But actually, no, there's people talking about, look at the Harvey Weinstein case, there's women that have been speaking up about that now. There's, the Time's Up movement. Theresa May has been talking about it. The BBC are covering it massively. There's so much happening with the way that women are being treated, and, without lack of knowledge and without voice, people don't know what to do when this happens to them. I am just a normal person that went to work and this happened to. But if I can just make some small difference, or if somebody else can be in the workplace and think, do you know what, I think that's happening to me, or this happened to me, or they didn't give me this risk assessment, or, whatever. If I can just help to trigger something in somebody to speak up, even if it's just to ask to be able to work from home 2 days a week because you've got a bad back or whatever. I have been so heated up telling this story because it just brings back all of these memories and this anger that I've had inside me for so long. So I'm sorry if parts didn't make sense, and feel free to message me with any questions that you might have. While I was going through this process, I spoke to lawyers and I really did kind of educate myself around employment law and pregnancy rights and women's rights in the workplace. So although I don't have all the answers, I definitely have educated myself on this topic, and I've used it to kind of guide myself through this situation. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask me. And also, please share this story, because I think this is something that needs to have attention. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see more videos from me, then please subscribe, and I will look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching.